Welcome to this deep dive. We're here again to try and make sense of the news noise, really figure out what's actually going on.
hmm
For this session, we've gone through quite a bit of material, including some interesting takes from a Doors News YouTube video, and it's thrown up some pretty fascinating points.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been looking at those first political poll results,
Right,
after Peter Omtzigt stepped back,
right.
and also digging into the whole debate around asylum seeker housing costs, the situation for migrant workers, which often gets overlooked, and how people are reacting to the government's spending plans.
And honestly, right off the bat, something really jumped out, a stark contrast, really.
Oh,
Yeah, this story of a long-term migrant worker basically facing real hardship over a tiny issue at work compared with, well, the significant money being spent housing Ukrainian refugees. It's quite a juxtaposition.
it really is. It kind of sets the scene, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Makes you think about the different realities people face here and maybe why those differences exist.
Exactly. So, okay, let's get into the politics first. That poll, the first one, post-Omsig, done by Marianne Zwagerman on Doors News, what did it tell us? What were the main numbers?
Well, the headline was probably that Groenlink's PVDA, the combined left list, they're still the largest party, holding steady, actually, projected at 29 seats.
Okay, stable there.
Yeah, the PVV, Geert Wilders' party, down just a little bit. But the really big story was NSC, Omtzigt's new social contract.
Ah, yes. What happened there?
A massive drop, I mean, really dramatic, down to just one single projected seat.
One seat. Wow, that's basically wiped out overnight almost. What could possibly cause such a huge swing? Oh, what about sort of wider trends over the last couple of months?
Yeah, it's a huge shift for NSC. Looking broader over the past 2 months or so, you see a couple things. On the left, it looks like Groenlink's PVDA is picking up some support, and that seems to be coming mainly from D66.
Okay.
And then within the governing coalition parties, the VVD seems to be gaining a bit, mostly it looks like, at the expense of the PVV. So some internal shifting there, too.
Interesting. Now, the Doors News piece also mentioned international events, things like, Trump's comments about Europe, the ongoing concerns about Russia. Are those actually filtering down and affecting these poll numbers, do you think?
It seems plausible, yeah. The analysis suggested these things are probably playing a role,
Yeah.
especially when you look at opinions on defense spending.
Right.
That increased feeling of uh, instability geopolitically,
Right.
it likely pushes national security and defense higher up the agenda for voters.
It makes sense. And those NSC voters, the ones who backed Omtzigt initially, where have they gone now? Now that the party is, well, the source called it de facto self-dissolved.
Right. Well, a big chunk, a significant portion, are now saying they back the CDA, the Christian Democrats.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Back to the roots for some.
Sort of. And a fair number are moving to the VVD as well.
Mhm.
But what's also really interesting is about a quarter of them just undecided now. Don't know where to go. And very few actually seem to have switched over to the PVV. So it's not like they all flock to Wilders.
Mm.
It's more of a scattering, a fragmentation of that support base.
Right, a real splintering. Okay, let's switch gears to government spending. The spring memorandum, that's the government's big financial update, laid out some plans, and the Doors News poll asked people what they thought. First up, that extra $1 billion for defense.
Yeah, that one got a pretty positive reaction overall. Scored a 7.0 out of 10 in the poll.
Pretty solid.
Very solid. And maybe not surprisingly, VVD voters were the most keen. They gave it an 8.5 on average.
Wow.
Yeah. Whereas SP voters, Socialist Party and Parti voor de Dieren, the Animal Party, they were much less enthusiastic.
Okay, that aligns with what you said about international concerns, maybe boosting support for defense. What about the flip side? Cuts to the climate fund, that stirred things up, I imagine.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that got a much more negative average reaction, only a 5.0. So right on the fence, maybe slightly negative, but underneath that average, really strong divisions.
Oh,
Well, you had really strong opposition from Groenlink's PVDA voters, D66, Parti voor de Dieren. They really didn't like the cuts. But then on the other side, huge support from Forum for Democracy voters. They gave it a 9.1.
9.1, very enthusiastic there.
Extremely. And PVV and BBB voters were also positive about the cuts. VVD and CDA were more moderate in their support. It really shows that deep split, doesn't it, on climate policy?
It really does, especially when, as you said, Groenlink's PVDA are polling as the biggest party, yet there's still significant support for cutting the climate fund. Shows the complexity.
Exactly. It highlights that tension between, environmental goals and maybe economic concerns or different priorities. It's a debate that's definitely not going away.
No doubt. Okay, another spending point, or rather lack of spending. The decision not to put extra money into prisons, how did that go down?
That was met with really strong disapproval. Across the board, actually. The average score was only 3.1.
So quite negative.
Very negative. And the negativity wasn't just from one side. It seemed pretty widespread across different political supporters, which suggests perhaps a general public concern about safety or the justice system that maybe cuts across the usual party lines.
That's interesting, especially given, well, the politics around it. The PVV state secretary involved, maybe even Wilders himself in the negotiations. It seems the public might want something different there.
It does seem that way, yeah. A potential disconnect between the public mood and some of the political positioning.
Okay. And the last big spending item, $860 million for asylum seeker reception, always a hot topic.
Always. And yeah, very strong opposition to this from PVV voters, Forum, and BBB voters. They really didn't support it.
Right.
But what's perhaps notable is that VVD voters also showed quite significant opposition, an average score of just 3.7.
So not just the furthest right parties.
No. Support, as you might expect, came from GL-PVDA, D66, and Parti for de Dieren voters. They all scored it above 6.
And the analysis suggested reasons for the opposition. Was it just the cost or something else?
The Dwar's News take was, it could be one of two things, or maybe a mix. Either just the sheer amount of money involved, the cost itself, or, alternatively, frustration with how asylum reception is managed. A feeling that it's poorly organized, perhaps inefficient.
Right. Both seem like, well, understandable viewpoints for different people to hold. Okay, let's loop back to that really powerful contrast we mentioned at the start. The migrant worker, Julia, versus the housing for some asylum seekers. Can you tell us a bit more about Julia's story?
Yeah, so Julia, she's from Poland, and she's been working here in the Netherlands for 12 years, doing tough jobs, greenhouses, warehouses.
Long time, hard work.
Exactly. And then apparently she was fired, just like that. The reason given was one day where her productivity wasn't quite up to scratch.
One day after 12 years.
That's the story presented. And the really crucial part, her housing was provided by the temp agency she worked for. So when she was fired.
She lost her home instantly.
Instantly. No safety net there, just out on the street, essentially.
Wow. That's incredibly harsh. What's happening with her now?
Well, the good news, relatively speaking, is that she's currently getting help from a homeless shelter in Utrecht. Volunteers are providing meals, support. But yeah, it highlights a real vulnerability.
And the contrast was drawn with
the situation of some Ukrainian refugees.
Yeah.
The source highlighted examples of them being housed in hotels, sometimes costing, up to 300 euros a night.
Per night.
Per night, yeah. With services included. And this hasn't just been for a short emergency period. In some cases, it's apparently been going on for quite some time, potentially years for some families.
That is a stark difference. And the columnist, Marianne Zagerman, she used some strong language about Julia's situation, didn't she?
She did. She called it akin to modern slavery, the way workers like Julie can be treated. She expressed this real sense of injustice and also this unsettling feeling that, this could happen to anyone, losing everything so quickly.
Yeah.
She also mentioned a specific example, a hotel in Rieswick that used to be used by Shell for training.
Oh, right. I remember reading about that.
And now it's housing Ukrainian refugees. She saw that as a kind of symbol of how things have changed, the priorities maybe.
It really does paint a picture, doesn't it? Business hotels becoming long-term refugee housing while someone who's worked here for over a decade ends up homeless. It forces you to think about, well, societal values, support systems.
Absolutely, how we treat different groups.
Which kind of leads us into another tricky area, the reaction to asylum policy from inside the government machine. This advert placed by civil servants in the Trouw newspaper. Tell us about that.
Yes, that was quite an unusual step. You had civil servants, people actually working within the Ministry of Asylum and Migration Minister Faber's ministry, taking out an advert.
Okay. What did it say?
It expressed support for the volunteers who work with asylum seekers here. But the really striking thing was that about 40 of them signed it with their own names.
Signed it by name. Wow. That's not typical behavior for civil servants, is it? Publicly taking a stance like that.
No, it's definitely unconventional. The general view, the sort of standard practice, is that if civil servants have disagreements or concerns about policy, they raise them internally through the proper channels.
Right. Not in the newspaper.
Exactly. Going public like this, especially signing your name to it, raises questions about, loyalty, the smooth running of the ministry. The source used the analogy of, say, Albert Heijn supermarket staff taking out an ad criticizing the store.
Yeah, okay, I see the point. You wouldn't really expect that.
It's just not how things are usually done. It points to maybe some strong feelings or tensions within that ministry.
Definitely highlights a potential conflict. And speaking of that ministry, there was also a notable appointment to the Migration Advisory Council.
Yes, Evelyn van Romberg, she's the new secretary director there, and her background is quite relevant.
Sure.
She was previously the director of Oxfam Novib,
Okay, a major NGO.
and she's also a Groenlings council member in the past. So given that background, her appointment could potentially create an interesting dynamic, shall we say, with Minister Faber.
Especially since Minister Faber is pretty new in the role, and it's widely seen as a really tough portfolio, maybe one of the toughest.
Absolutely. It's a brand new ministry, effectively dealing with incredibly complex and sensitive issues. And there's also been some commentary, fairly or unfairly, about her communication style.
Yeah.
So yeah, having a good working relationship with key advisory bodies like this council will be pretty crucial for her, you'd think.
Hmm. Okay, let's shift focus again slightly. The monarchy. Always gets pulled, always sparks some debate. What's the latest sentiment on keeping the monarchy?
Well, overall support seems pretty solid still. The average score for the Netherlands remaining a monarchy was over 6 out of 10, so decent backing.
But I guess that average hides some variation.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
When you look at supporters of different parties, you see some real contrasts.
Who are the least keen?
Forum for Democracy voters gave it a very low score, just 2.3. Then you had Partij voor de Dieren at 3.7, the SP at 4.3, and GL-PVDA at 4.7, all below average.
Okay, the Groenlings PVDA score isn't a huge surprise, given their official stance is to abolish it eventually.
Exactly, that aligns with their platform.
But Partij voor de Dieren at 3.7. Any theories there? The Jors News piece had an idea, didn't it?
Yeah, the suggestion was it might be linked to the king's hunting activities, which obviously doesn't sit well with a party focused on animal welfare.
Ah, right, that makes sense. Plausible connection.
Definitely. And there was also a brief mention of the king's recent comments about being prepared, national readiness.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And just some slight speculation, really, about whether those kinds of statements might subtly shift how people see the monarch's role, maybe connecting it subconsciously to leadership in uncertain times. Just a thought raised.
Interesting how many different things can feed into public perception there. Right, before we wrap up, maybe just quickly touch on the polling itself. For listeners interested in how these numbers actually come about, what's the method?
Sure. So these are online polls run using a large panel of volunteers. It's about 25,000 people, I think.
Wait, quite big.
Yeah. And they know quite a bit about these people already. Demographics, political leanings, things like that. For any specific poll, like the one we've been discussing, they select a sample from this larger panel. Over 5,000 people participated in this particular one.
And how do they select them? Is it random?
It's selected with political preference in mind, trying to get a decent spread initially. But then, crucially, the raw results are weighted.
Weighted. What does that mean?
It means they adjust the numbers statistically to make sure the final sample reflects the broader Dutch population in terms of things like age, gender, region, and, importantly, how people voted previously. So it's not just raw numbers from volunteers. It's adjusted to be representative.
Got it. So it aims to be a more accurate snapshot.
Exactly. And they don't survey everyone on the panel every single time. They also track things they call transition indicators, basically, seeing how many people who voted for Party X last time still plan to vote for them now. It helps them spot trends and shifts over time.
Okay, so quite a bit goes into it. Right, well, looking back over everything we've talked about, it's clear there are some major currents running through Dutch society right now. Political shifts, definitely.
The landscape is certainly moving.
These really divided opinions on big spending questions, like climate versus other priorities, and then these very powerful human stories emerging from the migration and labor debates.
And that initial contrast we keep coming back to, Julia's story versus the hotel costs for refugees.
Yeah.
It really does stick with you, doesn't it? It sort of forces a reflection on, well, fairness, priorities, how the system works for different people.
Absolutely. It leaves you wondering, really, when you take all these pieces together, the polls, the spending debates, the personal stories, what does it all say about the Netherlands right now? What are the underlying values or anxieties that these things reveal? Definitely something to mull over.
Food for thought, for sure.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and thanks to you for listening.
Oh, thank you. And just a heads up, we're keeping our own upcoming research around pensions. That's obviously a huge topic for so many people, so that might well be where we focus our next deep dive.